Okay, members, the sitting is resumed. It is time for questions to the Minister for Education, and I call Rachel Woods.
Everyone.
Minister.
Our statutory curriculum for personal development and mutual understanding at primary level and the personal development strand of learning for life and work at post-primary level includes prescribed content in the area of relationships and sexuality education. This represents a coherent legal framework within which schools have autonomy to choose their own delivery approaches and which also allows our school leaders to provide a curriculum with appropriate coverage, content structure and progression for their pupils. We have a world-class curriculum with flexibility and pedagogical autonomy at its heart. These are consistent features of high-performing school systems where school-level flexibility and teacher collaboration are the drivers of constant improvement because they lead to innovations in teaching and learning at a time when issues are important to young people. We also have a clear picture of best practice in our schools, which is characterised by clear and informed leadership from the school principal and senior leadership team, and by ensuring that RSE has a significant role in the school's curriculum provision. Additionally, it reflects wide-ranging consultation with stakeholders, including the parents, pupils and governors. The statutory curricular content is supplemented by teaching materials and resources developed and produced by the Council for the Curriculum Examination and Assessment, which has developed a specific RSE hub, providing a range of up-to-date, relevant resources which supports teachers to effectively address sensitive issues while they are contemporary and relevant to young people. I've instructed officials to work with our educational partners to provide further guidance to our schools on their approaches to the delivery of RSE, including the teaching of contemporary and sensitive issues.
Rachel Woods for supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and to the Minister for her answer. To summarise, the prescribed content is there for schools to take forward on their own for delivery, but that is a problem. I think we need to look around and take stock. Violence against women and girls is prolific and we don't feel safe on our streets, and there is a lack of knowledge of what a healthy relationship looks like. So my question is this: does the Minister accept that without legislating for mandatory, standardised and comprehensive RSE, then this executive is absolutely complicit in perpetuating an education system that is failing to tackle harmful beliefs and behaviours, a system that is failing our children and young people and is failing to drive forward the changes that we need to build a society where women and girls are valued, protected and equal in every sense?
I thank the member for her question, and I don't agree with the sentiment which she is saying, actually, because RSE is already mandatory. It's within our school. There is a minimum content order. There is quite considerable work has been done over many years to ensure that there are resources in play and in place in schools. Now, what I will accept is that there is quite some work needs to be done in order to give teachers the confidence and support in order to be able to teach this. But I think that she is wrong in what she is saying, and there is a considerable amount of work done by my department alongside its partners in order to assist schools in the delivery of RSE.
Could I just advise members to keep their questions succinct, please? Agus Nishiram Sir Nicola Brogan on Cash to her. Call Nicola Brogan.
And I thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, the issues of misogyny and gender-based violence and abuse against women and girls has been at the fore of the news recently, and it's a problem in wider society and one that we need to address. And one of the key parts in addressing that is focusing on relationship and sexuality education within schools and educating our young people on a wide range of issues, but particularly around consent and respect for each other. So in that case, would the Minister agree that RSE should be made completely mandatory and consistent across schools and across the curriculum, and that it should be age appropriate and inclusive?
I thank the member for her question, but I suppose I need to reiterate again that RSE is already mandatory. The statutory curriculum for personal development, mutual understanding at primary level, and the personal development strand of learning for life and work at primary school level includes high-level content for each key stage in the area of RSE, and you will find the specification in the Education Curriculum Minimum Content Order Northern Ireland 2007, and it is age appropriate. Now, as you will understand, schools will work within their ethos. They work in guidance alongside their governors. But I do accept the point that the member is making with regards to issues in relation to challenges to females and so on. And we are in a difficult society, and obviously we're working very closely, particularly with our online support to pupils. So the work that we are producing and the SIA Hub is constantly being updated and resourced in order to assist teachers in the delivery of RSE and to give support where appropriate.
I call Diane Dodds.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for her answers. Minister, this is an important area of the curriculum, and recent events demonstrate just how important and how far we have to come. It is not, as I understand it, solely the preserve of teachers, but could you outline for us the role that governors play in schools in ensuring that this policy is implemented?
Member for a question. RSE, as in all areas of learning, boards of governors of each school has a responsibility for ensuring that there is a comprehensive and age-appropriate RSE programme that it is taught and that the minimum content is covered. Now, the central tenet of the Department's school improvement policy, every school a good school, is the belief that schools themselves, through honest self-evaluation informed by data, are best placed to identify and address areas for improvement that can bring better outcomes for their pupils. And RSE, as with all other aspects of the curriculum, the governors are responsible for the quality of the provision, which is evaluated through the inspection. Now, my department requires each school to have in place its own written policy on how it will address the delivery of RSE. This will be done in consultation with parents, appropriate to the ethos of the school and endorsed by the Board of Governors. ETI, through inspection of child protection and safeguarding policies, routinely assesses whether or not schools have an appropriate policy for the delivery of RSE within the curriculum. Overall best practice in RSE should be reflected in the Board of Governors policy, and it's characterised by clear, informed and purposeful leadership from the purpose and the senior leadership team, a whole school planning process that involves wide-ranging consultation with all of the stakeholders, including the parents, pupils and governors, and a comprehensive RSE policy, including a parent-friendly policy. Clear linkages and explicit connections made with the aims, values, ethos, moral and ethical framework of the school, judicious and appropriate use of internal personnel, external agencies and guest speakers to handle sensitive topics. So the role of the Board of Governors is incredibly important in relation to the delivery of RSE at every school.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for her answers so far. My question refers to the topic of sexual consent. Does it concern the Minister that for many young people here in the North, the first time that they either hear of or learn about sexual consent is often at university, and does she see this as a failure by her department?
Well, I'm not sure where Ms Hunter has garnered that information, but I am of the view that this is very much something which is taught within schools at various levels, and she will, if she refers back to, as I've said, to the minimum content order in Northern Ireland 2007, that is part of that minimum content which is within our schools and which Board of Governors and school leadership have signed up to. So it is. Consent is part of the curriculum and it is part of the post-primary curriculum.
I call Kelly Armstrong.
Speaker. Minister, can I ask what action you have taken to implement the Gillen Review recommendation of a school sexual offences awareness campaign?
Thank the member for her question. My department is liaising with colleagues in the Department of Justice, which has lead responsibility for the recommendations in the Gillen report. Officials are part of DOJ's Education Awareness Working Group. This is a cross-departmental, multi-agency group established to raise awareness and education in Northern Ireland of the issues which were highlighted in the review. All publicly funded schools in Northern Ireland are obviously, as I've said, required to deliver the minimum statutory curriculum, including RSE. SIA, RSE Hub, provides a range of up-to-date relevant resources and sources. And in line with the recommendations about the need to include more information In the school curriculum for disabled children and children with sensory disability, part of the funding is provided to SIA has enabled RSE guidance and resources to be developed for children with special educational needs. So my department is working and has been doing so and has regular meetings with DOJ in order to follow through on the recommendations which were made by Gillen.
Call Mervyn Story.
There are currently 3 new capital bills for post-primary schools in Northern Ireland. Cullybackey College, the feasibility report has identified a number of options to provide accommodation for the approved enrolment of 700 pupils. A business case is currently being finalised by the EA to identify the preferred option, which will be issued to the Department of Finance for approval. An integrated consultant team has been appointed who will complete the design work on the preferred option. With regards to Dunclug College, the EA has entered into a contract with Graham Construction on the 11th of May 2021 to complete the design and delivery of the new school. RIBA Stage 4 design had commenced with construction work expected to start in February. Without warning, the contractor submitted a termination notice on the 30th of November 2021, and the EA is currently in discussions with the contractor in an attempt to have the termination notice withdrawn. The Ballycastle Shared Education Campus project is a £15 million major capital project for the construction of a new shared campus to accommodate Ballycastle High School and Cross and Passion College. Planning permission for the project was granted in May 2021. The procurement of the integrated supply team has been delayed due to the current uncertainty. Unfortunately, several bidders were unable to stand over their tendered prices and withdrew from the process. As a result, the procurement was terminated. A new competition is due to commence this month. The issues encountered during the procurement process have delayed the project by approximately 12 months.
Mervyn Story for supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for the answer and also for the time that she has taken previously to visit a few of those schools that are mentioned, and particularly she will be aware of the concern in relation to the happenings around Ballycastle High, Cross and Passion, and also in relation to Dunclug. Can the Minister give an assurance that those projects will proceed and that the challenges that we currently face will be overcome and that those schools will see their new bills as the process allows?
I thank the member for his question, and my department is committed to both of these projects. Obviously, the conversations are continuing with regards to Dunclug in the hope that we may be able to turn around the decision of the contractor, particularly in relation to the PAN, which was issued in August. So we're working in and around that notification. With regards to Ballycastle Shared Education Campus, I was privileged to be able to meet with staff and pupils of both schools, and I know that they're incredibly excited about the prospect of the new campus. The commitment that I can give is that I understand that despite all the setbacks that have been made in regards to this, that all the stakeholders are fully committed to the project. And we're obviously looking forward to the delivery of these facilities, hopefully in the not too distant future.
I call Jim Allister.
I welcome after a very long wait that there is some progress on Cullybackey College, though obviously it is still quite a distance to go. In respect of Dunclug, could you give us some more information? Where a contractor serves at termination, is there then an opportunity for the contractor to renegotiate the price? And is that really the tactic that's being followed here?
Just in response to the member's question, he may be aware that in August this year, the executive, through the Department of Finance, introduced a new procurement advice note, PAN 0121, and what this does seek to do is to give redress for contractors who have been subject to significant non-foreseen costs. So with regards to Dunclug, there are conversations currently ongoing between EA and the contractor in order to see if we can keep the project on track. In the event of that not happening, we'll have to go out again to tender.
I call Chris Little.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could I ask the Education Minister for an update as to progress on the integrated and shared educational Fresh Start capital expenditure?
I thank the member for his question, and obviously he's aware that the Fresh Start Agreement committed £500,000 of new capital funding over a 10-year period. There was a total of 28 projects, excluding Sparring, have been introduced. A total of 23 were announced in March 2016, 5 further in November 2018. Initially carry forward of unspent funding for 2016-17 and 17-18 up to the end of the current spending review period of 2021 was agreed by Her Majesty's Treasury under the Confidence and Supply Agreement. This allowed £91 million underspend related to that period to be reprofiled across the current spending review period. Subsequently, New Decade, New Approach next steps included the statement: the UK Government agrees to financial flexibility to reprofile funding and provide as part of the Fresh Start Agreement for shared and integrated education and housing. In December 2020, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury confirmed that the remaining £469 million of Fresh Start funding can be reprofiled across the remaining years of the programme. The total spend so far is just shy of £37.3 million. While the spend is low and relatively low to the overall £500 million total available, this is expected in the programme of the size, given that a lot of early work included procuring, designing teams and identifying sites and so on. The projected spend profile will, however, ramp up significantly in the coming years. The overall projected spend on the announced education projects, including Stroll, is currently at £665 million. So there's a significant requirement for executive capital to complete all of these projects. This additional funding is required over the next 5 years of the programme.
Could the Minister comment on the status of the Capital Works programme overall and advise what impact the pandemic and rising construction costs have had on the delivery of new and much needed school infrastructure?
I thank the member for his question, and as he'll be aware, I have issued a call on the 23rd of December for major capital works. That has now concluded, and applications have now been made, and an assessment will be made on those applications over the next few weeks, and I hope to be in a position to make an announcement in mid-March. Construction market has obviously been affected by sustained cost increases in the cost of materials. This was obviously quite noticeable in early to mid-2021. I understand that the rate of cost increases has slowed. However, prices do remain quite high. And it has had an impact, and as you'll have heard from my initial response, it has had an impact on the schools, particularly in the North Antrim area. You'll be aware that, again, from a previous answer, that Department of Finance issued a PAN notice. My department is working closely with contractors in relation to that in order to minimise disruption going forward. But some of the specific projects which have been affected directly have been Island McGee Primary School, Dunclug, Lismore Comprehensive, Our Lady of Fatima, St Joseph High School in Crossmaglen, and Holy Trinity College in Cookstown.
Jerry Kelly, I call Jerry Kelly.
Questions.
The youth services provided in North Belfast reflect the requirements identified through an extensive assessment of need involving young people, youth workers and other stakeholders carried out in 2020 and regularly reviewed. Overall, the EA is investing £2.6 million to support youth services in North Belfast in the current financial year. This includes substantial funding, totalling £1 million, to 4 large voluntary youth organisations in the area: John Paul II Youth Club, Ardoyne, Holy Family and New Lodge Youth Centres. It's important that both generic and targeted youth services are open and accessible to all children and young people, including those with special educational needs, and every effort is made to ensure that this is the case. The EA's local area youth development plan for North and East Belfast includes actions to ensure the needs of SEN young people are met, both through reducing barriers to participation in generic provision and providing bespoke support. At a regional level, the EA has provided funding to the Royal Mencap Society to support children and young people with additional needs, and this work will result in a series of pilot projects. The learning from these will be of benefit to all areas as they design services for the future. The EA has also committed regional funding to increase the youth workforce's capacity to provide relevant services to those with special educational needs.
Jerry Kelly, supplementary for Jerry Kelly.
Going with this listener, Fragger Gujisha, I thank the Minister for her answer so far and given the details she gave. I suppose I work with families and groups supporting young children with special educational needs and youth. And their experience, and mostly the families' experience is saying that there is a lack of youth services for the children. I know you've went through a list of North Belfast. So I suppose I would ask the Minister, would she review the provision? And I think she has said that that is done on an ongoing basis with a view to ensuring that these children and young people access the services they require. If we just finish with this, I know there are services there, but this is the family saying that their children aren't getting that type of service.
Okay, and I thank the member for his question, and obviously you'll understand that my department has taken special educational needs very seriously. There's been a considerable amount of work has been undertaken, particularly in school provision, over the last in recent years. I am concerned that there are parents who feel that their children aren't being able to access adequate provision, and I would be happy to meet with the member and any families who are experiencing those challenges, and happy to facilitate that.
I call William Humphrey.
Minister for her answers so far. I take this opportunity to commend Mark McBride and his team at Youth Services in North Belfast. The special education needs a hugely important issue. As the Minister will know, the Public Accounts Committee unanimously agreed an inquiry into this issue. Could I ask the Minister to provide details of the statutory and voluntary sector funding provided to groups across the 4 Belfast constituencies?
Okay, I thank the member for his question. And I suppose the statutory sector funding is fairly comparable across each of the areas, although there is a substantial difference in the funding to the voluntary sector. In East Belfast, statutory sector funding is $839,385. Voluntary sector funding is $450,771. In North Belfast, statutory sector funding $976,173. Voluntary sector funding £1,614,029. South Belfast £732,334. This goes to statutory sector funding. Voluntary sector funding is £675,437. In West Belfast, statutory sector funding is £1,095,038. Voluntary sector funding is £2,413,083. I don't have the breakdown as to how many groups this supports or indeed who the groups are, but I'm happy to write to the member with this information.
I call Justin McNulty.
Minister, I've mentioned this a number of times at Education Committee, and it's something I feel very strongly about. I'm going to give you the sack. Stop acronymising children. Acronyms dehumanise children and young people, and I feel it's time that your department committed to no longer using acronyms when referring to children and young people going forward. I just feel it's not appropriate and dehumanises those children and objectifies them almost. Can we commit to no longer using acronyms when we're referring to children and young people?
And I thank the member for his question, and I suppose I probably would like him to be a little bit more specific in relation to what he says. But every child's important and should be important, and each is an individual and should be treated as so. And I would like to think that within their setting that is how they are treated. And certainly I don't wish to dehumanise anyone, and particularly not our children and young people.
The member isn't in her place for question 4. Now move to question number 5. I guess Sir Nicola Brogan, Leishin Kesh in the card. I call Nicola Brogan.
Kesh Dever Kuig, Hall, question number 5, please.
With the Deputy Speaker's permission, I will answer oral question 5, 12 and 14 together, and I would respectively request an additional minute. My department has paid out almost £40 million of emergency support funding to the childcare sector since the beginning of the pandemic. This has been via 2 funding schemes, the Temporary Closure Fund and the Sustainability Fund. I'm aware of the challenges being faced by the childcare sector including childminders, as a result of the Omicron variant. Work is temporarily being taken forward on both an extension to the temporary closure funding and the review of the sustainability funding for childcare providers. The most recent COVID-19 Childcare Temporary Closure Fund covered the period the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2021. This fund supports providers who have had to temporarily close as a direct result of a COVID-19 incident within their setting, which impacted on provision, or who were unable to comply with the required staff-child ratios due to self-isolation periods of staff. I have agreed to the extension of this scheme for the period of January to the 1st of January to the 31st of March 2022. The last COVID-19 Childcare Sustainability Fund ended on the 30th of June 2021, having considered the position at that stage specifically regarding easement of COVID-19 restrictions across wider society, including the Department of Health guidance for childcare providers and the need to ensure remaining funding was targeted to meet the most acute needs. I decided not to extend the Childcare Sustainability Fund beyond the 1st of July and to focus the remaining funding on support for temporary closures. However, scoping work on reopening the Sustainability Fund is underway. My officials are meeting with key stakeholders to currently assess the current situation and consider what an appropriate response would be. I alerted the Department of Finance in December to potential pressure for childcare. Any further funding will be based on established need and the approval of the appropriate business case approvals.
Nicola Brogan, supplementary question for Nicola Brogan.
Thank you to the Minister as well. The Minister knows I've raised this a number of times with her. Because the surge in COVID transmissions has had such an effect on registered childminders in particular, which then affects not only them but the families that rely on them. And in rural areas like my own in West Tyrone, that has an even more kind of devastating effect because rural areas rely on childminders more than other areas, I suppose. Immediately after Christmas, 69 registered childminders were forced to close because of increased COVID transmission. So, although I welcome the fact that you are working on...
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask the member to come to a question, please.
Thank you. I welcome your announcement today. Can we just ensure that can you give us your assurances that the fund will be provided quickly to those registered childminders, please?
I thank the member for her question. Obviously, she has shown great commitment to the childcare sector, and I did give a commitment as when we come back from the recall that I would be looking to put the temporary closure fund back into play. I plan to make an announcement later this week in relation to that, so I stand by my commitment.
I call Trevor Clark.
Can I thank the Minister for her answers? You referred to the sustainability funding, Minister, in your first answer, coming to an end at the end of June. Can you outline the rationale actually for not continuing it from the 1st of July?
Thank the member for his question. And as you'll understand, the sustainability funding was allocated from April 2020 to June 2021. This was over 5 phases. And the objective of the scheme was really to focus on supporting settings when additional costs were incurred as a direct result of the Department of Health COVID-19 guidance, and there were obviously wider restrictions on society, and schools were also closed at that time to the majority of pupils, or there were also sort of phased reopenings. So it was a very difficult time for the sector. What we did do, we obviously made an assessment at the end of June as to what the next phase would be, and the decision was very much based on and informed by the relaxation of the wider COVID-19 restrictions, which included DOH's guidance for the sector, which had been imposing additional costs on those settings, schools returning to normal patterns of attendance. The demand for childcare was also increasing, although it wasn't back to pre-COVID levels. And there was also a lack of evidence to support specific COVID-19 additional costs, which had been incurred by providers, and also the phasing out of other universal government department support schemes. So the decision was made at that particular time. However, as I have said, I have notified the Department of Finance back in December that there may be potential pressure for the childcare sustainability funding, and obviously my department officials are working very closely with stakeholders in order to make that assessment.
Time for a very brief question from Maurice Bradley and brief answer if possible, please.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for her answers so far. Minister, I appreciate that childcare is cross-departmental. Can I ask the Minister how her department is working with the Department of Health to support the childcare sector?
I thank the member for his question. And while my department is responsible for childcare policy, the Department of Health has statutory responsibility for regulation and inspection of childcare services, and it's important that when considering the need for additional funding to the sector, that it's also supported by an enabling and supportive regulatory environment. Following my own discussions with the childcare sector, I have written to the Health Minister and asked what and whether he would consider if there is any scope to ease some of the regulations or to speed up administrative processes, which would help reduce some of the pressure on the sector at this particular time. And I was thinking of things such as the vetting process, staff-child ratios and the flexibility to mix age groups when needed. And this obviously would assist the workforce pressures within the childcare sector, but also assist those families who have no other childcare support. And I was obviously very conscious at that particular time the impact closing rooms was having on teaching staff as well. So of course all that was part of the rationale for those discussions, and obviously the letter which I then sent to the Health Minister. Officials in both departments have been and will continue to work very closely together, and also alongside the sector representatives through the COVID-19 Childcare Reference Group.
Okay, members, that ends period for listed questions. We will now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Agus iarm Sir Anya Murphy, Leish and Kesh, and Kid Kesh the Card. Anya Murphy for the first question.
And I'd like to thank the Minister for her answers this far. Minister, many families are already facing a cost of living crisis that is compounded by the ever increasing cost of school uniforms. Last year, you announced a review in terms of the support available to parents, including free school meals and uniform grants. Can you provide an update on that work and when hard-pressed families can expect to see some positive news?
I thank the member for her question, and I obviously very much understand what she has outlined. Work has begun on the review for both free school meals and for school uniform grant criteria, and really the purpose behind that was just to ensure that those grants were available to those who were most vulnerable. Also, at that time, what we do plan to do is also to consider the current rate of the uniform grant, as it's obviously there's a contribution to the cost of school uniforms. Very mindful of the increase in the cost and the burden that creates, and also we're looking to consider options to extend free school meals and also the criteria then for the uniform grant. These options would then be able to look at the guidance that my department also issues to schools, and whether or not that should be put maybe on a statutory footing, as at the moment it is just with regards to guidance, where we're looking for schools to have a policy which is fair and reasonable, and perhaps that doesn't go far enough. But I suppose the assurance that I can give the member is that that work has commenced, and I would be hopeful that it would be implemented by September 2023.
Next, Brescia, Anya Murphy. Supplementary question for Anya Murphy.
Can Collier, and the Minister's answer leads me wonderfully into my supplementary. Possible improvements to the uniform grant is one measure, but many families actually don't qualify for this support and are therefore forced to pay out hundreds of pounds per child on uniforms. Would you therefore agree that an effective way to support all families in terms of spiralling uniform costs is to bring forward statutory guidance on the supply and sale of school uniforms based on affordability?
I thank the member for her question, and that's certainly something that I wouldn't be ruling out, but it will form part of the review, and obviously there will be quite a range of stakeholders who will be consulted in relation to this. It will be schools, governors, parents, young people themselves, and it's really about ensuring that there is a policy which is fair, and certainly my department hasn't dismissed that as an option, because I am very mindful of the fact that it is now legislated for in England, and obviously we'll be keeping an eye on how that's rolled out as well.
Colin Muir for a question.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the Minister will be aware that parents have recently overwhelmingly supported a proposal for St Anne's Primary School in Dongnadee to transform to integrated status, and that's something I warmly welcome. Can I ask the Minister what she's doing to assess both parental and pupil preference in the area in the context of this decision?
And I thank the member for his question, and I was very privileged to be able to visit St Anne's Primary School before Christmas, and I got a very warm welcome, I have to say. As you'll understand, there is a development proposal also in relation to St Anne's, which makes it very difficult for me to make comment, as I may be the ultimate decision maker with regards to that. However, I am very mindful of the fact that there was a ballot for transformation, which was supported by the parents, and I understand that both NICE and the Education Authority are working closely together in relation to a timeline for the work, which obviously will need to take place now post the ballot.
And the Muir for a supplementary.
Thank the Minister for her response. Donaghadee is a growing town with many more new houses and families choosing it as a place to live. The provision of an integrated primary school in the town, to me, would be a great development. Would the Minister accept my invitation to meet with both parents and the school leadership to discuss the school and the future ahead in Donaghadee?
Thank the member for his question, and I'm more than happy to do that.
Mayor Pat Catney, Lena Keshtakor. I call Pat Catney.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, given that due to the ravages of COVID-19, our young people facing GCSEs, AS and A-level exams this year now have no previous experience of sitting exams, and that there's continued to be disruptions for teaching. Should you decide to proceed with exams, how do you propose to develop an algorithm that will be fair to all our young people, being sensitive to their varying circumstances, and especially, Minister, those children that we find with educational needs or with statements? Thank you.
And I thank the member for his question, and it would be my intention that exams will proceed if at all possible, and I know that that's also the intention of the other jurisdictions. Indeed, I met with Minister Walker yesterday, and certainly he didn't lead me to believe that it was his intention to do anything otherwise. I also got a 4 regions meeting on Thursday in order to discuss various options in relation to how COVID is being dealt with, but in particular examinations. SEA, as you know, has already made significant adaptations to the suite of qualifications, permitting the omission of one of the units of assessment for the majority of the qualifications. And these omissions are really designed to take account of the ongoing disruption and obviously significantly reduce the number of exams that young people will have to take. And while I still appreciate that these are difficult times, I think that it's only fair to them that they are able to be tested. SEA has made it very clear that examiner judgment and not an algorithm will be at the heart of the awarding process at this year. Obviously, algorithms became quite the thing a couple of years ago, and it's certainly something that we wouldn't be looking towards this year. So examiners, I understand, will be taking account of the disruption which has been faced by our students, just to ensure that any grades that they will receive will be higher than pre-pandemic years. So that work is ongoing.
Thank
you, Minister. And Minister, will you promise, and it's a big ask I'm asking of you, but that you will continue to monitor that situation and act with speed to be fair to our young people and put their well-being first? Thank you, Minister.
I do thank the member for his question. The well-being of our young people is really my utmost priority, and the situation will be kept under regular review. And my officials are working very closely with officials, obviously, in the other jurisdictions to monitor developments there, and they're also just to really ensure that our young people are not disadvantaged in any way, particularly whenever they're looking to gain either employment or to go on to third-level education. So, if there is to be any change and there is to be any alternative awarding, it will be similar to 2021, and this will be stood up at pace, so there will not be a delay. But at the moment, I would like to assure the member that my intention is that examinations continue for this year.
Jerry Carroll, then a case to carry. Call Jerry Carroll.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, cost of living has already been referred to. Inflation is officially 5%, but prices are rising way beyond this. What work has the Minister and her department completed to ensure that teachers, classroom assistants, auxiliary staff aren't financially hit by these exorbitant increases?
And I thank the member for his question. Obviously, it's very much a societal issue, but the member will be aware, obviously, that there are continually ongoing discussions in relation to pay, particularly with regards to teachers. he may be aware that work is ongoing at present, and obviously I'm having discussions with the Department of Finance with regards to that. But certainly if there's any way that we can give support, that we certainly will.
Case Brescia, Jerry Carroll. Supplementary question for Jerry Carroll.
I thank the Minister for answer. Minister, staff shortages in schools. As I understand it, the Education and Teaching Inspectorate all are trained teachers. What conversations has her officials had about the redeployment of these staff to help in schools with isolated teachers or teachers being off sick from COVID?
And I thank the member for his question, and he'll obviously understand that this has been a piece of work which has been ongoing for a number of months now, in order to try to supplement the NISTER register to ensure that we can maximise the number of substitute teachers on that register. There are in excess of 7,100 thereabouts teachers on that register. He will know that I made the call before Christmas for retired teachers. That's actually been very successful. We've had over 250 retired teachers who have now expressed a preference to go back onto that register. I've also written out to those who are on career breaks. Now, while that's quite a small number and they may not wish to come back, I have had correspondence from those who would like that to happen, so we're now making that possible for them. With regards to the likes of ETI and other bodies, again, we've had those conversations. They'd be very small numbers, and I suppose it's really about sort of weighing up the benefit of them coming back in. So you're maybe only talking maybe about 20 inspectors who are also carrying out really important work supporting teachers at this particular time. So that's going to be a bit of a judgment call to make, and whether that makes a difference. And you'll also be aware the work that we're doing with regards to student teachers in order to be able to free up other teachers in order to cover. So quite a lot of work has been undertaken in order to try to address that.
Cathal Boylan, then a case to court. I call Cathal Boylan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answers. Unfortunately, Minister, because of the COVID pandemic, the issue of mental health is raising its head amongst our children and young people. And I'm just wondering, can you briefly outline what service provision is available within the school setting to tackle these issues and supports that are available?
Okay, and I thank the member for his question. And obviously, emotional health and well-being of our young people has been really important prior to COVID, but particularly since COVID. There has been much higher levels of anxiety and distress, particularly for those who were then in the early parts of the return to school transitioning back. As I'm out and about and I speak to principals, and I hear about the pressures that there are. Now, probably the majority of our young people are very resilient, but of course not everyone has good support at home either. So we have been very focused on trying to deliver a suite of measures to ensure that we capture as many young people as possible. And you will understand that there's a framework which was recently developed in conjunction with the Department of Health. We committed as a department £5 million to that, health £1.5 million, and there'll be recurrent funding associated with that. So there have been a number of programmes which have been delivered and others which will be delivered in the coming months. There's Text to Nurse, there's the EA Youth Service Reach programme, there's an enhancement of the RISE team in post-primary schools, we have the SIA Wellbeing Hub, and you'll also be aware of the Healthy Happy Minds, which is a focus for primary school pupils as well. So there is ongoing work, but that doesn't mean that it's going to address all the needs, but at least it's a very healthy start.
Okay, Brescia, Cathal Boylan. Supplementary question for Cathal
Boylan. And Minister, just on the healthy minds, I mean, clearly the criteria set out for provision and service providers. Is there an opportunity or any flexibility within that programme to allow schools to access external providers, all in what's identified within it? Because obviously they roll out programmes and there may be an opportunity there.
The member for his question. Obviously, the programme was quite late in its delivery, and there have been some pressures, particularly on being able to access some services. Some schools have been very fortunate in that they already have had services in schools. Others have maybe tried to be a bit more creative and have been working in hubs, but working very closely then with EA. So I am very conscious of some of the challenges around Healthy Happy Minds, and also I'd be keen to see this extended in order to allow sort of a little bit more flexibility around that. So I'm conscious of the issues with regards to that and working with colleagues in order to try to address them.
I have time for a quick question. So, Ian Sir, for Igdaragi and the cash to card.
Minister, I've been contacted by a number of substitute teachers who have contracted COVID-19 because they don't have a contract agreed. They haven't been able to access sick pay. Could you advise how they can access this, and if you're putting any measures in place to ensure that going forward, this is obviously a broader problem when substitute teachers are sick. Is there anything that can be put in place by the department to ensure that they do get paid when they are sick?
And I thank the member for his question, and obviously he has a particular interest in regards to substitute teachers. Obviously, because they're only employed for temporary periods, and it's very much on an ad hoc basis, and because they don't have contracts, then that's obviously an issue for them. Some of them may have other employment which may be able to assist that. Certainly, because they're only paid for the days that they're engaged, it makes it quite challenging. But I'm happy to take that back and come back to the member.
Okay, members, time's up, so if you take your ease while we move to the next item of business.